Imagine a woman in dark sunglasses sitting before a judge. She doesn't speak. The entire courtroom waits for her to take them off. But she doesn't, not even after being asked 3 times. And that silence feels heavier than any verdict. The morning light in the Providence courtroom slid across wooden benches, catching the glint of a dozen phones raised just low enough not to be noticed. Judge Frank Caprio entered with his familiar calm, a warmth that usually softened the edges of nervous defendants. But today, something about the air was brittle. On the defendant's bench sat a woman, mid-40s perhaps, dressed with deliberate precision, black dress, neat hair, large dark glasses that covered half her face. Her purse was clutched tightly to her chest, knuckles pale against the leather. The case was small on paper: unpaid speeding fines, failure to appear. Routine. But the way she sat, rigid, composed, almost defensive, made the room lean closer. Caprio smiled lightly. "Ma'am, you know this isn't Hollywood, right?" A few chuckles flickered through the benches. The woman didn't join them. "I just don't like people looking at me," she said quietly. The laughter died. Caprio adjusted his glasses. "You've missed 3 summonses," he said. "Is there a reason you've ignored them?" Her voice came measured, clipped. "I didn't ignore them. I just couldn't come." Couldn't, or wouldn't. She didn't answer. A long pause stretched between them. The clerk shuffled papers, the sound sharp in the silence. "According to this," Caprio continued, "you were clocked at 45 in a 25 zone. And the vehicle," he glanced down, "isn't registered to you." That made her sit even straighter. "It's my car. It's just complicated." "Complicated?" Caprio repeated. "Whose name is on the registration?" A heartbeat. "Then, my ex-husband's." "But that doesn't matter." The murmur that swept through the room said otherwise. Caprio didn't raise his voice, but his words grew quieter, more deliberate, the kind of tone that made people listen harder. "Miss," he glanced at the file, "Rachel. Everything matters in this courtroom. Even what you'd rather not explain." Her fingers tightened around the purse strap. For a moment she looked ready to speak, then stopped herself, jaw set. The judge leaned back slightly, studying her posture, the way she avoided eye contact even behind the glasses. Something in his expression shifted, less authority now, more curiosity. "You seem afraid of something," he said finally. "This is just traffic court. Not a place for fear." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "You'd be surprised, Judge," she said softly. "Fear drives faster than any car." The remark drew another whisper from the gallery, half intrigue, half unease. Caprio let it settle. "All right," he said, closing the folder. "Let's take this one step at a time. Tell me what's really going on, Miss Rachel." She stayed silent. The judge's tone remained patient, though the room could sense the shift. Something beneath this case didn't fit its paperwork. Outside, a siren wailed faintly in the distance. Inside, the sound of a woman refusing to remove her sunglasses echoed louder than any alarm. And though no one could name it yet, everyone in that courtroom, judge, clerk, spectators alike, felt the same quiet certainty: this wasn't about a speeding ticket anymore. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. "Let's start simply," Judge Caprio said, voice even. "Your name and what you do." She lifted her chin a fraction. "Rachel," she answered. "I used to be a stylist, in another life." No rustle this time from the benches. The words "used to" do their own kind of work. Caprio nodded, inviting more without pushing. Rachel's fingers loosened on the purse strap, then tightened again. "I had a small salon on Elm," she said. 3 chairs, regulars who booked months ahead. After the divorce, the landlord raised the rent. My credit cards were already screaming. I sold the chairs, the mirrors, the color stock, everything that still had a price. She swallowed. The car stayed in his name. Paperwork takes time, they said. You lost the business, Caprio said quietly. I lost the people, she corrected. When you cancel on clients because you can't leave the motel, they stop asking. A breath. I don't sleep much. Eyes got bad. These help. She touched the frames of her glasses. They make it easier to be looked at. The judge glanced toward the file. You received multiple summonses. Why not come in? Rachel's answer broke out faster than she meant it to. Because when you're sharing a room with your daughter and the front desk takes cash only, court isn't the first thing you plan. She bit the last word as if it had cut her. A ripple moved through the room, then stilled. Caprio let a few seconds pass. I hear you, he said, gentle but not retreating. But the law doesn't vanish because life is hard. We still have to meet it. Rachel took a breath and, very slowly, removed the glasses. The gesture was unceremonial, almost clumsy. Underneath, the skin told its own story, purple fading to yellow at the edge of one eye, a shadow that makeup hadn't completely chased away. The gasp didn't come from a single person, it came from air leaving the room at once. The judge set his pen down with care. The click was soft and final. Ms. Rachel, he said, thank you. A man in the back shifted, then stopped, a phone lowered without recording. The clerk looked at the desk as if reading a line that wasn't printed there. I didn't ignore you, Rachel said, voice quieter now. I was hiding. From everything. From him. From bills. From the mirror. She tried for a smile that didn't arrive. Sunglasses are cheaper than courage. Caprio's reply came low, almost conversational. This court isn't here to shame you. A beat. It is here to find out what happened. Something in the gallery softened. The arms-crossed posture of a few spectators unwound. The judgment they'd carried in with them, about arrogance, about entitlement, lost its footing. Rachel folded the glasses into the purse and kept going, slower, steadier, the salon's last day, the landlord changing the locks while she boxed up towels, the way her daughter pretended not to notice dinner from a vending machine, the notices piled under the motel door like snow. Every sentence made the traffic citation feel smaller and the person bigger. No one applauded. No one cleared a throat. The room held her words the way a church holds a hymn, quietly, with respect. And somewhere between used to and now, the case shifted. It wasn't pity that filled the benches, it was attention. People weren't looking at the sunglasses anymore. They were looking at the woman who had finally taken them off. The silence after Rachel's story didn't fade, it settled. Even the low hum of the fluorescent light seemed to hold its breath. Judge Caprio leaned back, studying her with the kind of attention that could feel like mercy or interrogation, depending on what you carried. He picked up the file again, eyes tracing the printed lines. Let's go back to the facts, he said, his tone measured but softer now. According to the record, the car is registered to your ex-husband. But these tickets, he tapped the papers lightly, were issued after the divorce. Was he still using the vehicle? Rachel's posture stiffened. She looked down at the polished table as if the grain might answer for her. Miss Rachel, Caprio pressed gently, I need a clear response. She inhaled, slow and shallow. No, she said finally. He wasn't using it. Not then. Then why, the judge asked, are these violations connected to your name? Each one lists you as the responsible driver. Her voice dropped, the words nearly swallowed. Because I couldn't change the title. He wouldn't sign it over. Wouldn't, or didn't want to. Rachel hesitated. The question scraped against something raw. He knew what he was doing, she said. He left it that way on purpose. Caprio's pen stopped moving. He looked up slowly, his expression sharpening, not with anger, but understanding that comes from seeing patterns too many times. You're telling me the person who owns the car created the debt, knowing you'd be blamed for it? Her reply came in a whisper. Yes. It was his way of keeping me in his shadow. The room stirred, someone exhaled loudly, another murmured, unbelievable. Caprio lifted his hand for quiet. His eyes returned to her. And you didn't contest this? You didn't report it? Rachel shook her head. No one listens when you're the woman who left. He said if I caused trouble, he'd make sure I lost custody. He's done it before, made people believe I was unstable. The words hung between them, heavy but clear. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Rachel, this court isn't here to fix every injustice between two people. But we can't ignore it either. She looked at him for the first time since removing her glasses. Her eyes were tired, rimmed in red, but steady. I didn't come here to make excuses, she said. I came because I'm tired of running from something I didn't do. Caprio nodded once, quietly. You said earlier that he told you no one would believe you. Is that why you wore the glasses? Rachel gave a faint, almost embarrassed smile. He used to say my eyes told on me. Said I was terrible at hiding guilt. Were you guilty? Her voice cracked. Only of staying too long. A murmur rippled through the gallery, soft, unsure, like people realizing they'd been watching the wrong story unfold. Caprio let the silence stretch again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was a pause filled with thought. You've lived under someone else's signature for years, he said quietly. It's time you had your own again. Rachel looked up, startled. What does that mean? It means, Caprio said, that the law isn't just a wall. Sometimes it's a door. You just haven't walked through it yet. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she looked less like someone on trial and more like someone waking up. The judge sighed, then closed the file. This case isn't about traffic violations anymore, he said, voice steady. It's about a woman who stopped believing she deserved fairness. He turned to the clerk. We'll adjourn briefly. I'll need to review the original registration forms. The gavel struck once, soft, deliberate. As people stood, the woman with the sunglasses remained seated. She wasn't hiding now, but she didn't move. Her eyes followed the judge as he left the bench, a faint tremor running through her hands. For the first time in years, someone had listened. Not to the fines, or the forms, but to the pauses between her words. And for a moment, the courtroom, the cameras, even the whispers faded, replaced by something simpler, an old, almost forgotten sound, the quiet breath of a person beginning to believe she might still be seen. The courtroom was utterly still. The kind of stillness that carries weight, like air before a storm. Judge Caprio looked over his glasses, his voice calm but sharpened to precision. Miss Rachel, he said, in my courtroom, truth doesn't hide behind dark glass. But I see now, you're not wearing sunglasses. You're wearing shame that doesn't belong to you. The words didn't echo, but they landed with a force that made every spectator sit a little straighter. Rachel blinked rapidly, her fingers trembling on the edge of her purse. The sound of a single pen rolling off a desk was the only thing that moved in that moment. Caprio shifted his gaze toward the officer standing by the wall. Officer Daniels, please step forward. The man in uniform cleared his throat and approached the stand. Yes, Your Honor. You were the one who issued several of these citations, correct? Yes, sir. Tell me, what do you recall about the vehicle and the person operating it? Daniels glanced at Rachel briefly, then at his notes. Well, the car, a blue Honda Civic, was repeatedly spotted near a property on East Mason Avenue. Belonged to a Mr. Daniel Clayton. That address, as I understand, is Miss Rachel's ex-husband. Caprio's brow furrowed. Continue. Each time we ran the plate, it came back to her. But when we reviewed surveillance footage, the woman driving didn't look like her. Similar build maybe, but not the same person. The murmur that followed was low, disbelieving. Caprio raised a hand, quieting the room instantly. Are you saying, he asked slowly, that someone deliberately used her name on those tickets? The officer hesitated, then nodded. That's what it looks like, sir. Rachel's breath caught audibly. Her hand went to her mouth, not to hide emotion but to hold it in place. Caprio turned back to her. Miss Rachel, do you understand what this means? She managed a nod, her voice barely a whisper. He told me no one would ever believe me. And then, for the first time, tears slipped beneath the edges of her lashes. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet drops landing on the wood of the bench, darkening it one spot at a time. The judge leaned forward, elbows resting on the desk. His tone softened, but his eyes didn't. You know why I ask people to look me in the eye when they speak, he said. Because the law isn't written on paper. It lives in people. And sometimes, it hides where pain teaches them to stop looking. Rachel looked up through her tears. What do I do now? Caprio inhaled slowly. You tell the truth. Not the edited version that fear allows. The full one. Her story came out in fragments at first, then all at once. After the divorce, Clayton had begun calling her at night, parking near the motel, leaving messages on her windshield. When she stopped responding, the fines began arriving. She'd tear them up, but they multiplied. He said he'd make me responsible again, she whispered. That's what he called it. His version of teaching me discipline. A sharp sound, someone's gasp, maybe, broke the silence. Caprio didn't move. And you believed you couldn't fight back, he asked. I believed, she said, that fighting him meant losing everything left. For a long moment, the judge said nothing. The room watched as he removed his glasses, folded them, and set them down with deliberate care. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the steadiness of someone who'd seen too many versions of cruelty dressed as control. Miss Rachel, the court will recess briefly. I want the Providence Police Department to review the footage and confirm what we've heard today. He paused, then added, more softly, this is no longer about unpaid tickets. This is about a woman reclaiming her name. The gavel came down once, crisp and final. Rachel's shoulders shook, but she wasn't hiding anymore. Not behind glasses, not behind fear. Around her, people sat in silence, not the silence of judgment, but of recognition. As the judge left the bench, a woman near the back whispered, barely audible, she's not guilty of speeding. She's guilty of surviving. And for the first time that day, even Judge Caprio, known for patience beyond measure, let something flicker across his face that wasn't calm. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was the kind of quiet, human fury that only appears when justice has waited too long. The next morning, the courtroom was full before the clock struck 9. Reporters lingered by the back wall, their cameras lowered but ready. The story had spread, everyone wanted to see what would happen when the man behind the shadows stepped into the light. Rachel sat quietly at the front, no glasses now, her posture steadier, though her hands twisted slightly in her lap. Across from her stood Daniel Clayton, impeccably dressed, expensive watch gleaming beneath his cuff. He looked like someone who believed the world owed him the last word. Judge Caprio entered, greeted the room with his customary nod, and took his seat. This hearing will reconvene, he said. We now have both parties present. Mr. Clayton, you've been called to clarify the ownership and use of the vehicle in question. Daniel smiled, a polished, almost rehearsed expression. Your Honor, I don't see what all the fuss is about. The car belongs to me. But we were married for years. She had access to it. I might have used it. She might have. Frankly, no one remembers exactly who was driving when. Caprio didn't blink. So you're uncertain whether you, in fact, committed the violations attributed to Miss Rachel? I'm saying, Daniel replied smoothly, there's no proof either way. These things get messy after a divorce. Messy, the judge repeated, tasting the word like something bitter. Let's see if the record can tidy things up. He gestured toward the clerk. A screen flickered to life on the wall behind him. The room leaned forward. The footage began, grainy, gray, time-stamped, but unmistakable. A man stepped out of the driver's seat of the same blue Honda. Same suit. Same watch. The camera zoomed just enough to make denial impossible. Daniel's smile cracked, the charm slipping into irritation. "This proves nothing," he said quickly. "I was just moving the car. I wanted to." "To what?" Caprio cut in, voice low but sharp. "To teach her a lesson." Daniel hesitated. "I wanted her to take responsibility. She walks away from everything. I wanted her to see there are consequences." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the audience. Caprio's gavel came down once, bang, and the noise stopped cold. "Responsibility," he said slowly, "isn't humiliating someone you once promised to protect. It's owning your own actions. You used the law as a weapon. That is not discipline. That is cruelty." Rachel didn't look at him, not even now. Her gaze stayed fixed on her hands. But when she exhaled, it was the first deep breath she'd taken in months. Caprio turned to her. "Miss Rachel, please stand." She rose, tentative but upright. "After reviewing the evidence and testimony, this court finds you not responsible for the listed violations. All fines are hereby dismissed." A wave of quiet applause broke out, restrained but heartfelt. Caprio lifted his hand. "Please," he said gently, and the room stilled. He turned back to Daniel Clayton. "However, this matter doesn't end here. Your deliberate misuse of another person's legal identity will be referred to the Providence Police Department for further investigation." Daniel started to speak, but Caprio's gaze froze him in place. "You wanted consequences, Mr. Clayton," he said. "Now you have them." For the first time, Daniel's confidence faltered. He lowered his eyes, jaw tight, the muscles in his neck flexing against the silence. The judge shifted his attention back to Rachel. "You've been through more than what this court can document," he said. "But I can do one thing. There's a program for rebuilding small businesses, specifically for women starting over after hardship. I'd like to recommend you for it." Rachel's lips parted, but she couldn't find words. Her eyes glistened, not with tears of defeat this time, but something quieter, stronger. "You don't have to decide today," Caprio continued. "Just promise me you'll think about it. The law can only close one chapter. The next one, you write yourself." For a long moment, she stood motionless. Then she nodded, once. Caprio leaned back, a trace of a smile softening his sternness. "This court," he said, "is adjourned." But before the gavel fell, he added one last sentence, spoken softly, almost to the air. "Don't applaud me," he said. "Applaud her. She reminded us all that courage isn't about staring down a judge. It's about finally facing yourself." The gavel struck. The sound carried like a heartbeat through the room, final, certain, and deeply human. As people began to rise, a woman near the door whispered, "That's what justice looks like." And for the first time since the case began, Rachel allowed herself a small, steady smile. Weeks later, the courtroom looked different. The same polished benches, the same echo of footsteps, but today there was no tension in the air. No case waiting to break open. Just a quiet hum of people gathering for something gentler. Judge Caprio sat at his bench, finishing a few signatures when the bailiff leaned in. "Someone here to see you, Judge," he said. She entered slowly, sunlight following her through the open doors. Rachel. No sunglasses. No tremor in her step. A soft blue dress replaced the heavy black she used to hide behind. She held a small box in her hands. Caprio smiled. "Miss Rachel," he said. "Or should I say, Ms. Rachel, business owner." She laughed lightly. "You heard. I hear everything in this town," he said. "So, how's the salon?" She set the box on the desk and opened it. Inside lay a tiny pair of sunglasses, delicate and silver-framed, the kind made for a doll. "It's small," she said. "But it's mine." We call it New Light Studio. I hired 2 women from the shelter. They're learning, same as me. Not just how to cut hair, but how to start over. The judge looked down at the miniature glasses, then back at her. You kept your promise, he said. She nodded. You gave me a reason to. He gestured for her to sit. You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were hiding arrogance. Turns out, you were hiding exhaustion. Rachel smiled faintly. I was hiding from being seen. You didn't just look, you saw me. Her voice caught slightly. I used to think the law was a wall. Cold. Unforgiving. But it wasn't. Not that day. Caprio folded his hands. The law can't heal people, he said. But sometimes, if it listens hard enough, it can help them start again. She hesitated, then added softly, You asked me once why I wore sunglasses. I finally figured it out. It wasn't fear. It was because the truth was too bright, and I wasn't ready to look at it. He smiled. And now? Now, she said, I'm not afraid of the light. For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt thick with quiet understanding, the kind that doesn't need ceremony. Caprio closed the small box and pushed it gently back toward her. Keep them, he said. Let them remind you how far you walked to get here. She shook her head. No, Judge. They're yours. A souvenir. He tilted his head. For what? For seeing what I couldn't. Caprio looked at her for a long second before taking the box. Thank you, he said. You know, people think justice is black and white. But it isn't. It's every color people carry when they stop pretending. She smiled, stood, and offered her hand. He shook it. Firm. Respectful. As she turned to leave, Caprio called after her, voice warm and steady, Miss Rachel, keep walking toward the light. It suits you. She paused at the door, glanced back, and answered simply, I will. When the doors closed, Caprio sat for a moment, holding the tiny glasses in his palm. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet, meant for no one in particular. Some cases end with a gavel, he said. Others end with grace. And in that silent room, justice no longer felt like a rulebook. It felt like reflection. Like 2 people, once strangers, who'd both decided, without saying it, that the truth, when finally seen, is always enough.